I'm here with Riley today. You're not going to believe how many deals he's closed as a brand new agent in the past 2.5 years. We just went over it. He's closed 93 rentals, he's closed 47 sales, he's made a total of $568,000 as a brand new agent in Chicago. And he's iconed with eXp Realty 2 times. So, Riley, it's very rare to hear stories like yours where most agents in the past 2 years are struggling. They don't know how to get leads. They don't know how to close deals. And you're over here, you're generating a crazy amount of rental leads. You're getting tons of buyer leads. You're closing them. Introduce yourself and tell us what's your secret.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, I'm Riley Hextail from Chicago, with eXp Realty. I've been in the business 2.5 years. It was March 2023 when I joined. Um, it's no big secret, I don't think. I mean, I think I just kind of outwork everybody else. That's what I roll with at least. And then on top of that, it's just finding the leads, talking to them, communicating properly, and then doing whatever it is they're out there asking me to help them do. Um, yeah, I mean that's my secret, I guess, but not too big of a secret.
We were talking, off air before about how you're, kind of focusing. I mean, you're splitting it a little bit, but you're kind of focusing on renters and you're turning renters to buyers, but you're also focusing on getting your own buyers right now. And you're using a pretty interesting method where you're not spending that much money for leads right now. Tell us a little bit about, how you did those, what is it, 93 rentals and 47 sales. That's almost 150 deals that you've done in, 2.5 years. I mean, come on, that's very impressive. So tell us a little bit about how you're getting these leads, because that is one of the secrets is lead generation. Everybody would love to hear that.
Yeah, so I'd say my business has kind of three primary pillars, I'd say. Um, so probably my biggest pillar is just pay-per-click ads. I primarily do that through Google. I've ran Facebook ads, I've done Zillow ads. I've tried pretty much everything I thought would work. For me, Google has just kind of resulted in the highest ROI. So that's number one. With that, the Google ads are primarily kind of geared towards renters. I do get buyers and sellers from it every now and then, but I'd say 90% of the income that's come from that has been renters. And then to take that a step further, trying to convert those renters into buyers over time is a strategy I try to kind of implement, I guess, just in my day-to-day activities. So I try to do a weekly newsletter, and that goes out to everybody that I've helped. So that's primarily focused on like buying and selling. So, if I do help a renter now, in a year or two from now, when they're looking to buy or whatever it is they're doing, hopefully they're seeing that and kind of keeping me top of mind. And then it eventually converts over into a buy. Um, Pillar number two would be just like workplace referrals, company referrals, referrals from lenders. I mean, just other people in the industry that are, out here doing what we're doing. If they have a client moving from, I just had one close today. It was a referral from, I think, California. Their friend lived in Chicago, wanted an agent here. They didn't know anybody. So, we connected and kind of got that going. So that's been a big part of my business. And I'd say starting out, that was probably the that's kind of what jump started me, I guess, into gaining traction. Just connecting with people like that who needed help, and then kind of leveraging that to kind of roll into my third pillar, which is sphere of influence. So, anytime I'm out there like doing showings or have a closing or like an inspection, like I'm just trying to like take pictures, videos, like get reviews, just anything I can put out to my sphere through like Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, just to get people, that I know to know that I'm in real estate. And I think starting out as like a brand new agent, it's kind of difficult because people are going to see you start posting about real estate kind of out of nowhere, and like they know you're brand new agent. So that takes and I'd say like a year and a half, 2 years in is kind of where I saw like that wall kind of start to get breaking down, where I'd have people just kind of passively reach out to me that I knew, that I might have not talked to in a year or two. And they started asking me about real estate and like asking me for services and stuff like that. So those are kind of the three pillars. Um, Within them all, there's different avenues I think that you can take and different methods you can use to utilize those. But, for the most part, That's how I'm getting most of my business.
That's crazy, man. I mean, a lot of agents right now, they don't have any pillars whatsoever. Like some
Right.
of them are using their sphere of influence and only using that, but you learned early on. I mean, listen, you grew up in, Chicago, so you do have a pretty large sphere of influence and network, I'm assuming. But even for agents that, have grown up in a local area and are just trying to rely on their sphere, you can't make $500,000 in 2 years just by relying on your sphere of influence. If you had done that, that wouldn't have happened, right? Like, have you even broken down? Because this is one thing I try to tell agents all the time. Sphere of influence is secondary. That's why you just listed it as your third pillar, right? Because it's something that you always have to do. But the first two ways, like those are active lead generation strategies. One that you said was on Google PPC essentially. And for anybody that doesn't know, Google PPC basically just means you're doing pay per click, you're doing ads, and he's targeting rentals and or, renters to actually close rentals, and he's converting renters to buyers, and then he's getting a lot of referrals. That's his second pillar. So he's kind of like a rental agent first, a referral agent second, turning renters to buyers, kind of mixed into the first two, and then using his sphere of influence because he does have a big network. That's how he closed almost 150 deals in 2 years as a brand new agent. So, and this is now, right? Like, that's what I really want people to understand. It's 2025 and you're doing this now. You did it in 24, you did it in 23. And that's when the markets started to kind of tank. I mean, depending on where you are in the country, obviously, Chicago might be a little bit different than where I am in South Florida. And for those that don't know me, Andy Coleman, I'm a 4-time icon agent, very soon to be 5th time. I've closed over 900 deals. I've made over $2.5 million in commission, mainly by working with renters. I kind of took the whole rental approach to the next level. And Riley is kind of doing the same thing right now, just in a different market over in Chicago. So, Riley, when you're talking about your sphere of influence, how much business do you think is coming from your sphere? How much business do you think is coming from referrals? And how much is coming from your like rental leads?
Depends on the way you look at it. I'd say in like transaction count, it leans a little bit more towards the pay-per-click Google ads, Facebook ads, whatever. Just because yeah, I'll end up doing 90-ish transaction or rentals this year probably. Most
Wow.
of those are coming from pay-per-click ads, or now they're kind of turning into like repeat clients or friends of clients that I've worked with or whatever it is. So, it kind of depends on where you categorize those. Um, in terms of like volume or income though, or GCI, it's pretty evenly split into thirds, I'd say, of sphere of influence, some sort of company or partner referral, and then those pay-per-click ads.
That's crazy, man. I mean, just to be, I guess if we break it down, 2.5 years divided by $500,000, you're making about 180K, if I did the math correct, per year, give or take, averaged out, which is
Yeah.
awesome to be doing. Have you seen that you're scaling, over time, or how is that working? Like, actually, do you have numbers? Just you could be
Yeah.
hypothetical, or I mean, estimate what
Yeah.
first year, second year.
Yeah. I mean, I track all of my numbers fairly, closely, I guess. So
That's
year one, year one. So I'd say from March of 2023 through December of 2023. So not really a full year, but first calendar year. I did 11 sales and 11 rentals. Year two, it was 21 sales and like 38 or 39 rentals. This year, I just had my 15th closing today, and I've done, I think it was like 41 rentals this year so far. So in terms of scaling, I've been trying to at least double everything I've done the last year. I want to do a little bit more than that. So if I do fall short, I'm at least doubling it. And that's continued and, that's happened so far. So if I can do that again this year, I'll be happy. And then if I can do that again next year, I'm going to have to get an assistant, I think. But um, yeah, that's kind of been my plan. It's worked out so far.
You could handle, at least a couple hundred deals a year on your own. If you get the right systems in place, you really
Yeah.
could. Do you want
Yeah.
to?
Yeah.
That's another story.
Right.
Because that's kind of what I did. I went from, I think it was 50 deals my first year, 6 sales, 44 rentals, 160 deals my second year. I think it was like 12 sales and, whatever, 150 or whatever rentals. And then third year, it was very similar, about 12, 15 sales, and then, 220 something rentals. And then my third year, I got a team. I was like, you know what? Instead of doing 250 deals a year or trying to beat that, I'm like, let me get some agents to help me out. So like you are getting to that point right now where you've built up the credibility and you could probably start exploring getting agents to help you and work with you because handling, 50, 60, 100 deals a year, it is a lot of work, especially if you're still like, relatively new. And it sounds like you're very organized, which is something I tell people all the time. You got to track these things. If you don't know your numbers, how are you supposed to grow and scale? You don't. It's just a guess. And then every time you look at your spreadsheets, I'm sure you're like ecstatic and it probably motivates you to keep going, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I look at I have a Google spreadsheet. I mean, it's super basic. I have other like CRMs and stuff that I implement outside of that, but for tracking everything, it's all in a spreadsheet. I can see what it is. I can cut and paste somebody, put them in a different section once they've closed. And I look at it multiple times per day, probably just to like kind of keep track of everybody that's actively doing something or to move things around or whatever it is. I don't think in terms of things I do well, like organization is one of them. And I don't think if you don't have that organization, you can't scale to 100 plus transaction in a year. You're going to be all over the place. I mean, it's 100% essential. And however you do it, whatever works for you, but like there has to be some system there for sure.
See, you had more secrets than just working hard. I'm pulling
It's
them
hard
out
to
of you,
be
but
honest.
no, there's a lot of things, that I tell agents this all the time. There's so many things. I mean, realistically, there's hundreds of things you got to get right. To get into that echelon of closing 10 to 30 deals a month, making 50K on average every month, there is a lot you have to learn. And like, this is everything that Riley's talking about. He's been slowly learning this over the past couple years. One thing that I really noticed was, you said your first year you only did like 10 rentals or so, second year maybe like, 15, 20. This year though, I mean, you're going heavy rental based, right? You've already closed like almost 50 rentals this year and you're probably on track to close at least 100, maybe more, right? Why the switch to focusing more on renters now?
It just kind of worked. The first like calendar year, I had somebody tell me not to do rentals, so I didn't ever touch them. Didn't really think about doing it. I didn't want to do it.
Who told
Uh,
you that? Who told you that?
it was somebody I don't even remember, but somebody had told me not to do it. It was a mistake. They were
Why'd
informed.
you listen to them? Were they like your team leader or broker or something?
Yeah, it was just somebody I trusted at the time, and I was like, oh yeah, I should, listen to it. And for me, I didn't necessarily want to get into rentals either. I wanted to focus on sales. So like their reasoning was like, hey, like if you want to focus on sales and like use your time, efficiently and do that. So
Hmm.
like I get the mindset. The switch happened where it's kind of a short story, I guess. I was on vacation. I just started my Google ads, I think. I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico for a wedding. Somebody called me off Google. I started talking to them. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like somebody's reaching out to me that wants help. Like that was the first person that had ever like passively done that. They're like, hey, yeah, we want to look at this rental. Like, can you help us out with this? And at the time, the MLS had the commissions on it. So I looked it up and it was like a $1,700 commission. So I was like, okay, like let me see if I can get somebody in there to help you. I couldn't find anybody to help them, but I called the listing agent. I was like, hey, I've got this client that wants to check your rental out. Like, can you open it up for him? She was like, oh, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm right by it. So she opened it up for him. The client calls me like, hey, we like it. We want to apply. Listing agent sent them the application. They applied. They got accepted. I made $1,700. I never met the client. Uh, Never saw the property. I was out of state. Made a couple of phone calls to make it happen, and I got paid. Fast forward, that client's probably referred me five or six of their friends that have also put into rentals. So solely based off of phone calls, somebody I'd never met who, I've talked to a handful of times now, but um, I did it and I was on vacation. I'm like, why am I not doing more rentals? So, that kind of triggered the whole rental experiment, I guess, with me. And, on the flip side, I've had the exact opposite where I've shown, 10 properties and they don't rent something. But for the most part, rentals are typically an easier transaction, at least for me, than like a buying and selling transaction. Significantly quicker here in Chicago. A lot of the time, the listing agent just sends over the application directly. Um, after they're approved, there's not really that much paperwork. So it's nice and quick and easy. It might take 1 to 3 days for the whole process. It's done until they move in. I can kind of move on to the next thing. It's, not as big of a commitment for people. So handful of things I think that kind of just make it a lot smoother. Um, and then once I kind of realized, there was pros to it, I kind of leaned into it a little bit more and here we are.
Do you think you're going to be going, like heavier into the rentals like in the coming years as the, economy is cooling down a little bit? Not as a practical to buy a house compared to rent because I'm sure in your area, I mean, this is how it is in mine, where you could buy a $500,000 house and spend 4,500 bucks a month, on your taxes, insurance, mortgage, all that good stuff. But that same house, you could rent it for like 3 grand, 3,200 bucks. It's a good $1,000, $1,500 cheaper. Is that kind of how it is in Chicago as well?
Yes and no. Like each neighborhood is a very different market. It's like the downtown markets, I'd say, they're much slower on the sell side. It's a little bit pricier to rent there. I mean, if you're downtown, you're going to have a super high HOA. Once you get into the outskirts, it's a little bit different, but um, yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons, I think, to both. And I think ultimately the market here right now is still pretty competitive, especially when you are on the outskirts of downtown. So like I see it, I've seen it a lot this year where, rental prices have just kind of continued to increase, but so have home sales, and you're still seeing multiple offers on every property here if it's in a good area and
Wow.
priced well. So like people get into this process where they're trying to break out of the rental cycle and they're trying to buy, but then at times it's been so competitive here that they're like, all right, I'm just going to keep renting. So like, kind of
And you're
it's a little
capitalizing.
right. It's a little bit of a different market, I think, than you are in. But at the end of the day, like people are either going to rent or they're going to buy. Like, and if they're going to buy, great, I'll help them with that. It's super competitive here, though. So a lot of people are just leaning into the rentals. So, with this market, at least, it's something I've been leaning into. If the market changes and that's not the case someday, maybe I'll get away from it. But for the foreseeable future, I'm sure I'll keep leaning into rentals for sure.
Yeah, dude, one piece of advice, having done this for many years now, I still do rentals today. I have not stopped. I don't do as many anymore. I got a team of agents that help me out, but in terms of myself, I mean, like you said, you made $1,700 per rental. I think before we talked, you're averaging about 1,800, and I'm sure you're probably not charging the transaction fee yet, which I'll talk to you about after this. And you can make, let's just call it $2,000 for 2 hours of work. You're making $1,000 an hour. And there's like almost nothing, I'm sure you know this now, there's almost nothing that can go wrong with a rental. Once that lease agreement's signed and an escrow deposit's done, that's it. Your commission's as good as gold at that point. So that's why I've never stopped doing them. And here's the cool part, right? And you're going to start experiencing this. You mentioned it a little bit about, your renters starting to turn into buyers. Watch this as the housing market starts to change and shift into a buyer's market because it will, right? Like, I don't know if it's going to be a year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, hell, it could even be 4 years from now. Eventually, these real estate markets, they ebb and flow. They're going to turn to a seller's market, to a renter's market, to a buyer's market, back to this, back to that, blah, blah, blah. Once it goes into a renter's market, all of your closed rentals, you're basically going to be able to convert 30% of them into buyers, like bare minimum, because 50% of tenants eventually that are renting eventually buy a house. Even if you capture 30% of them, if you got 300 rentals under your belt closed and you're doing what you said before, you're doing a weekly email, you're doing a 369, you're doing the social media posts and DMs and everything, you will literally, right, do the math on that, 90 buyers. You're going to get 90 buyers. 90 buyers at Chicago's commission. I mean, geez, that's going to be at least $10,000 a deal. You're talking almost $1 million in commission within a couple years. Whenever the market switches over, you're going to get a little bit, here and there, obviously, doing 10, 20, 30 sales a year. But think about that, man. That's why I would never stop doing rentals whatsoever, because you can actually like truly transition out of them once you get to that point when you're closing 100 150 sales every single year. And then you can even have have other agents that handle your rental deals. You don't have to give up that stream of income. You could work out a commission split or charge them per deal, like whatever you want to do, where you have a team of agents working your rentals. You could be handling the buyers, or you can get a buyer's agent that handles them if you really want to. And then eventually all those buyers are going to turn into sellers, right? Like you could have an entire team, rentals, rental agents, buyer's agents, sellers agents, and you could be sitting back just kind of like maintaining everything at that point. Is that kind of where you're heading right now, or like what's your goal?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I know the answer to that. My goal, I mean, short term, my goal. So currently in EXP, in the state of Illinois, I'm the number one in total transactions year to date. So like,
Yes.
yeah. So my goal this year is like to do that, and I think let's say I can do 100 total transactions this year and be the top one in the state for our company. I mean, that's for me like a big milestone and a good leverage piece for a handful of other avenues within the business. So that's really like my main goal this year right now. Beyond that, I mean, yeah, creating some sort of team or structure where I can start to pass off rentals or whatever it is. I mean, it's in the back of my head. I'm just not really exactly sure like how I want to structure that, but something along those lines will happen at some point for sure.
Yeah, you got time, right? Like you're doing well right now, you're making money, you're saving money, and then the team comes. I mean, me personally, I hated social media. I like even me filming a podcast interview right now that I'm putting on YouTube was out of my like I would never think I would ever do that in a million years when I was doing real estate, full time as a solo agent. And then all of a sudden, I get all these agents coming up to me because the year I closed 250 deals, I was actually, believe it or not, I was ranked number 3 in my state, which is crazy, right? 250 deals, and I'm still number 3. We had this agent, John Scally, I think he closed
Oh,
800
yeah.
deals that year, which is
Yeah.
like fucking crazy to me. Good guy though. And agents started reaching out to me like, how are you doing this? Like, how did you make $500,000 after being in the business for 2 years? And I was like, I don't want to tell you. I don't want to tell them my secrets, right? Because think about it, right? If I tell them I'm working with renters, first of all, they're not going to believe me, and then second of all, they might actually start asking like, well, how did you do all this? And then they might want to actually start working with renters, and that's a big reason why, believe it or not, why you're having so much crazy success right now with the renters is because nobody's really doing it in your area. If every single agent started working with renters, it would be impossible because agents would have other agents leads, clients, they would have other agents to choose from at that point. Just like, if you're doing like a FISBO strategy, right? We're calling for sale by owners. Think about it. They're getting 50 phone calls a day by 50 other agents, and they have a lot of choices out there. That's why it's so difficult. Rentals, not so much. There's not really that many agents doing it. So working with renters and making this kind of money that I've made and you're making right now, it's because that niche, I call it, it's a lead generation niche. It hasn't been oversaturated yet. Not enough agents are doing it, which is going to get pretty interesting over the coming years, as more agents catch on and realize, holy crap, I could make how much working with renters, and it doesn't matter what happens to the market. Because think about it, right? You've been doing this for 2 years in one of the worst housing markets since the 2008 crash. I was doing it during a pandemic. I'm still doing it now during the worst market, and it works better now than ever before. That means that a rental-based strategy will literally keep you going consistently every single month, which just about as much income as you want, which is pretty wild to think. The crazy part is no agents understand this. Are you like nervous that a lot of agents are going to figure this out and then it's not going to be as effective for you anymore?
No, I mean, to be honest, not at all. And I think primarily because like I think dealing with multiple renters, it takes a lot of effort. And I think a lot of people don't want to put that much effort and thought and work into dealing with renters. So like I'm not worried about it. I'm doubtful that they're going to actually go and implement it. I mean, I think there's examples of that all over the place.
You're not going to have to worry about it at that point. Because think about it, if agents really do catch on and figure out all the systems and processes and how to stay organized, then you're going to be moving on to phase number 2, which is, essentially building your team and obviously turning your closed renters into buyers. That's the crazy part. You don't have to work with renters forever. Like I still do it because I want to build that massive rental database. Remember I said before, 30% of your closed renters turn into buyers. So if you close 1,000 rentals compared to 300, you're going to get that many more buyers in the future. That's why I still work with renters right now. But when that happens, when that market shift takes place, when it really turns into a heavy buyer's market, dude, you will never have to do another rental again in your life. And most agents don't understand that. They don't understand. And I agree with you, what you said before. Most agents, they think about doing a rental and, spending 2 or 3 hours and only making $1,700 for whatever reason in their head. That's not appealing. They would rather, show 30 properties to a buyer that may flake out, right? And spend 20 to 40 hours on that buyer to make $10,000 or $15,000. For whatever reason, in an agent's head, the average agent, they find that more appealing than what me and you are doing right now, which to me is like, you know what? Hey, if you want to feel that way, right? Leave the renters to us. We'll take them all day long. But the crazy part is, if you start turning your closed renters into buyers, you're gonna have more buyers than renters eventually. And then, yeah, you do make, 5, 6 times as much money with a sale. But nobody wants to put in that work that you're doing right now, that I've done in the past, and I'm still doing right now. Nobody wants to do it. They don't want to sacrifice to make, 20 or 30 grand a month by running around, showing rental properties, putting in rental offers, doing lease agreements, right? They don't want to do that for whatever reason, or even getting landlords too, because I'm sure that's something which I'll ask you about in a second, because you can actually get your own rental listings, which is dope, man. It's super cool having a rental listing and getting a full month's rent commission and getting extra leads coming in from that. So I'll talk about that in a second. I've been doing it for years. I absolutely love it. And I think if you implemented that into your business, dude, you would go from, what'd you do, 50 rentals this year? You would have probably done 150 rentals this year already. I swear to God, if you just implemented that one little thing, not even to mention turning your landlords into sellers, because that is a real thing as well. But turning your closed renters into buyers and putting in the time that you're doing right now. I'm telling you, remember I said this to you, you're going to make $1 million a year within, I'll give it 2 years, maybe 3, because you're a really hard worker. Two years probably, you're going to be making $1 million a year. You keep this pace up, you keep closing these, renters, do at least 100, 150 a year. You're going to be making $1 million a year within 2 or 3 years, guaranteed.
Yeah, not, I would agree. 2 years. Yeah. Maybe not next year, but it'll be the year after for sure.
Dude, the market's shifting, right? Like everybody knows that. I mean, and even think about it from a statistic standpoint. 4 million sales in 2024 compared to 45 million rentals. That number, obviously right now, there is a 10-to-1 ratio of renters to buyers. But in the future, that's going to change. It's slowly starting to change. It's going to go down from 10-to-1 to 9-to-1 to 8-to-1 to 7-to-1, and it'll probably end up, at 5-to-1, where a lot of people are buying, because as the inventory starts going up right now, we're about, on average nationally, I think we're about 18% under 2019's pre-pandemic inventory levels. So we got a little ways to go to catch back up inventory wise, because obviously mortgage rates and inventory set prices essentially, right? Once that happens, once we pass the 2019 levels, I feel like we will have to exceed them by a little bit. I think maybe 10 or 15% over 2019's levels. We let these properties build up on the market for long enough. And this is local. Obviously, every area is going to be slightly different. Like Chicago might be months behind or months ahead of other markets. But eventually that's going to happen. And as these properties sit on the market for longer and longer, and the sellers are trying to get these crazy high prices that they thought they can get back in 2022, and then they start realizing, well, nobody's paying these prices anymore, they're going to be forced to do one thing, which is lower the prices. As the prices start dropping and coming down, as days on market gets higher and inventory starts to stack, we're going to have a major market correction. Once that happens, mark my words, interest rates are going to drop, because that's the real key. Getting interest rates to, I don't want to get crazy, because we're never going to see 2.7% again, right? We're not going to see that in our lifetime. I mean, maybe if something crazy happens, like,
Yeah, if we see it, it's probably not a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah, it won't be a good thing. I was going to say something where probably shouldn't. Won't be a good thing, but we'll probably see 4.5%. I'm estimating, because I think back in like 2016, 2017, I think it was hovering around 4.5. It was anywhere from like 4 to to 5% in 2016 or so. And I think we're going to get like around that level again, like because after the 2008, crisis happened, I think that's where we're going. But we're around what 7% right now, 6.8% on mortgage rates as of what's today, June 25th, 2025. The mortgage rates are still really high because the 10-year treasury yield is obviously going up right now, which is not what they want. And the federal funds rate is remaining the same. I think we're at what, 4.5% right now. So, with everything that's going on, I don't want to get political and everything. So, that's why I think mortgage rates are going to stay high for the foreseeable future, probably another year or two. But I don't know if you knew this. Every 1 percentage point that the mortgage rates drop, it triggers about 10 million buyers to enter the market. Because obviously we have a big population in America. It's really not that many people. It's only about, 340 million people. It's about 0.34%, which is not that much, but it does trigger a lot of people to enter the market. As that starts happening, if we go down from 6.8% to 5.8%, from 5.8% to 4.8%, that triggers 20 million buyers to enter the market. Then you're going to start seeing that inventory that rose past pre-pandemic levels. They're going to start gobbling that inventory up. Once that happens, I'm going to call it like the Goldilocks zone of very high inventory, price corrections back to about average appreciation levels, right? Because if you think about it, an average appreciation of a home should be 3 to 6% per year. We can just estimate 5%. You could calculate this pretty easily. Take 5% appreciation from 2019 up until right now, 2025. That's 6 years. Because obviously the appreciation wasn't 5%. It was more like, 30% for 2020, 21, and 22. We had like a 30% appreciation per year until things about doubled, which is insane. So by my calculations, if we follow an average appreciation trend of 5% per year, compounded, of course, a $400,000 home, which is typically the average single family house in America, I think it's like $420,000. The average would be about $550,000. That's all it should be worth today with normal appreciation. Yet, those kind of homes, let me ask you then, in your market, those kind of homes, how much would that sell for? Because I know in my market, it would be going for around 700,000 to 800,000 today. Is that similar in your market?
You're talking like just in terms of appreciation?
From 2019. Oh, you weren't doing real estate back then, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you've
I
looked at
know.
that data.
I would say, I mean, just from my personal experience, I bought a condo. This is kind of why I got into real estate, was just to buy my own condo. But I'd bought a condo in 2023 and it's appreciated roughly 50% since then. So like,
See,
I mean,
see,
if you would have bought prior
that
to
should
that, it would be even more, I'm sure. But
It's 100%. Yeah. If you bought in 2019, it would have went up 100%. So like you just proved exactly what I was saying, which never should have happened. Prices should not appreciate that fast. And that's why we need a correction. And that's why it's slowly starting to happen, depending on where you are in the country, right? Because this is local, right? Like every single area is going to be a little bit different. Some areas will be years like the Northeast, back in Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, for instance, like they have low inventory. Their prices are kind of peaking right now. So they're like 2 years behind a market like Texas or Florida, which, we've peaked back in 2022, maybe 2023, depending on the area. And then we've been seeing a gradual decline ever since. But as that starts happening, right, because you can generally predict, when the market's going to bottom out by doing that simple basic formula. If you think appreciation holds true, which I do think it's going to end up holding true because that's why they're keeping the mortgage rates around 7% right now and they're not really dropping them. Obviously, if they really wanted to, they could do that. They're not going to though, because then obviously it would trigger too many buyers to enter the market and
yeah,
the prices haven't corrected yet, So I believe that is coming. And it's a really good indicator if you're working with a buyer right now. This is just for anybody that, is an agent that is working with buyers right now that doesn't want their buyer to be underwater. Because if you buy a house right now and you don't get a good deal on it and it does drop by 20, 30% over the next couple of years, I mean, they're going to be underwater, meaning their house is going to be worth less than what they paid for it. They're going to owe more to the bank than they can sell the house for. And if somebody is forced to sell their house before they're ready to sell it, before the market goes back up again, because it will, over 10 years, 20 years, the market eventually will go back up again. They're going to be screwed. They might lose their entire life savings. So that's why I'm saying right now, stick on your path. Like, and any agent that is watching this, follow that path. Work with the renters, get heavy into them now, and start turning your renters into buyers, right? Like, there's so many different ways to make money with renters. I always say it, right? There's MLS lead strategy. That's kind of what you're doing right now. You're doing a mix of MLS leads and you're doing a mix of apartment leads. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
MLS and apartment leads, that's two ways to make money. And there's multiple different ways. You can go on marketplace, you could do the syndications, you can do PPC. I mean, there's so many ways to get leads. A lot of them are free, some of them are paid for. Like, I think we were talking before, you didn't even spend that much money. It was like eight, nine, $10,000 in PPC leads. It's really not that much, honestly. And then you could do strategies like landlord leads. You can get your own rental listings, and that syndicates, right? It does. You throw it in your MLS, it syndicates to every site out there. And then think about it, right? If you have a rental listing that you get a full month's rent commission for, and then you also get hundreds of rental leads from that, which you could then incorporate and do, what me and you have been doing by getting them into other properties, you'll make, I mean, you're making an average of $1,700. I'm making $2,000. Imagine places like LA or New York City. They might make even more than that per renter, and it's only a couple hours of work and a few showings. That's the craziest part that nobody understands. Nobody realizes there's that many ways to generate leads from rentals. And on top of that, like you said before, renters turn into buyers. I'll tell you this is really cool too. And I would love for you to like try to start doing this. Start learning a little bit more about the economy and the housing market so you can start really impressing these renters and kind of do, analyses. I don't know, I might have butchered that word, analysis, I don't know. Try to do an analysis on their current situation, if it makes more sense to buy a house compared to rent a house. And you might be able to convert active renters right now. So these rental leads that you're getting, you might be able to convert a lot of them into buying a house instead of renting. I mean, think about it. It's a forced savings. Most people in America, obviously, if you don't buy a house and you rent instead and take that down payment, let's call it, $500,000 house, 20% down, $80,000, right? Easy math. If you take that $80,000 and you invest it into an index fund like Vanguard's VOO or VTI, which has an average 10% appreciation per year, oh my God, you will make 5, 6, 7, 8 times as much money in the long run as investing in a house. But guess what? Nobody does that. Nobody does that. They don't take that money and invest it in an index fund. They don't do that. They rent their house and then they go out to McDonald's and they buy Jordans and jewelry. They don't do what they should do. So if you can convince a renter to buy a house instead of rent a house, yes, you're going to have to put the down payment down, maybe spend a little bit more per month right now, but it's a forced savings. Here's a cool stat that I would love for you to use on some of your renters and tell me how this works. The average renter is 40 times poorer. Basically, the average homeowner has a 40 times higher net worth than the average renter because of just what I said before. That means if somebody's worth $400,000, like a homeowner, the average renter is worth, $1,000. That's how crazy the inequality gap is from a homeowner compared to a renter. Even though you can make a lot more money if you invest in an index fund and rent a house, truly you can. Nobody does it, right? Nobody does it. So a house is a forced savings. Use that knowledge and learn a little bit about the housing market. And I swear to God, every single, we'll say 5 to 10 renters that you close right now, before they even get into a home, before you rent them a home, you can turn them into a house buyer today. Not tomorrow, not next year, 2 years or 3 years. You'll be able to turn them into a buyer today. I do it every single month. I'm doing at least 1 or 2 of these, turning them, a rental lead into a buyer today because I break down this knowledge that they have no idea about. All these things that we're talking about right now, they have never heard in their entire life. Don't even mention you could put 5% down. You don't even need 20%. You tell them that just right there. They're like, I didn't know that. I thought I needed 20%. I don't got 80 grand, but I do have 20 grand, right? Like, dude, try to start doing that right now. Keep me posted. In like a month, I guarantee you close at least a couple buyers off of that.
Yeah, I've had a couple, 2 or 3, I think, this year so far that started out as renters and we'd go out and check a couple places out. And once they realized what they were getting for their money renting versus what they could get for buying, they were like, all right, we're just going to buy something instead. Financially, it just made more sense. They're getting a bigger place, a nicer place for a less monthly payment versus if they were to rent. So yeah, it happens.
Do you like try to turn them into buyers, or was this something where they're just like
Not
realizing it
super
on their own?
actively. With the couple
That's what I'm
people
saying.
with, yeah, I mean, it's not something I'm
Do it
like seeking
active,
really, but
dude. If you seek it, they will come, right? Like I'm telling you, man. Like don't force anybody to do anything they don't want to do. Don't pressure them into it. But if you
right,
just
right.
give them the knowledge, right? Like just give them the knowledge, and just shed the light, and then just be like, hey, man, or woman, whoever, what do you want to do, right? Like here's the facts, and just like you said before, if it makes more sense to buy a house and they're getting more for their money to buy instead of rent, you give them that information and give them that choice. And then you do whatever the heck they want to do. If you actively start doing that, I'm telling you, you will at least triple, quadruple, 5x the amount of sales that you do.
All right, yeah, I'll start trying it out. But yeah, I mean, I agree. It just kind of comes down to educating them on the situation, right? Whatever that is.
Dude, it was a pleasure talking to you. Unfortunately, I got to run right now, and I could talk to you for hours. Any agent that is working rental deals, geez, man, like, come on. We're such a rare breed. I feel like we all got to stick together. So, all right, two things before we go, because we're both with EXP Realty. Anybody that is looking for a new brokerage and wants to learn, what we know, reach out to any one of us. I'm going to drop our Instagram handles and emails in the description. Y'all could reach out to us if you want any kind of help whatsoever. And EXP is an awesome brokerage. Coincidentally, Riley just reached out to me on Instagram. He saw one of my videos or something. So like we didn't even really plan this or anything like that. I had no clue he was with EXP. It is the best brokerage though. So if anybody wants to, reach out to any one of us, we could do some cool co-sponsoring stuff. It's really awesome. The direction that Leo Pereja and Glenn Sanford took the company. Love it right now. Riley, anything else you want to say? Any new advice to a new agent that you would want to give?
Man, advice to a new agent, just stick with it. I mean, figure out a couple things. You got to really put a lot of effort into it. Give it 6 months before you try something else, but like give it an honest try before you just give up and move on, right? You got to stick with it. Once you start to see traction, dig into that and just run at it head on.
I love that advice. I love that advice. My closing advice, because I always say this, the riches are in the niches, right? Focus, find one thing that you can excel at. Basically what Riley just said. And get consistent. Go all in on that one thing and one thing only. Become the master at it. So good that you make everybody else around you in that particular thing look like amateurs, and you will have no choice but to succeed. I promise you that. Riley, it was awesome talking to you. And for everybody watching, I hope you have an amazing week, and I'll catch everybody on the next one. Bye.
Eddie.